Maybe we don't get too serious. I don't know.
I know. I did
Wow.
feel like last time was very serious. I don't know how we make this not as serious
Well, I could
because we're
tell you
like,
something.
I think
How
Maya
mad
should
I
bust
was.
out. You should break out of your Mishti persona now, because I'm like, I know she's great.
I
She's
know what the
sweet.
hell. People are like, she's so Mishti. I was like, what are they talking about?
Hey,
She's like, Maya
I
to
don't.
he's
কি
sweet.
সুইট আমি বুঝলাম না এই কথাটা
I'm
কোত্থেকে
like,
এগুলি পাইছে
how do you know?
ভদ্রভাবে বসে থাকে তার জন্য আর আমরা দুইজন হলে গিয়ে হারামি you know talking all kinds of shit um yeah
God.
so Father's Day is coming up. What are you guys doing for your
I'm off the
I don't
hook.
know what do you call you don't even call him significant other. I'm not sure. You're a baby daddy. I don't know.
Oh, my ex, I think. I don't know. I'm off the hook.
Yeah.
And we don't have any plans. We're probably going to be in LA. We're going to go see a show together. We've got the kids. Kids are going to be with a babysitter. We're going to spend some time together, which I think is really needed right now for us to connect. Um, and I want to touch back on that, like on fathering and how you yourself were raised,
Yeah.
because I think for my baby daddy or my husband, that plays a huge part in how much
100.
he how much he emotionally contributes to that relationship. I think he's a tremendously wonderful father, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of things that he didn't see growing up. So he
Yeah.
doesn't know what he has to do. So he has to be guided in such a way, which I personally don't have the bandwidth to do. Because for me, it's kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to have to explain all of this to you, I might as well just do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, but for him, for example, his father passed away when he was 10. So there was a lot missing in terms of having that father figure. Although he does have two older brothers, but while he was growing up, that like his brothers were at that stage of life where they were kind of finding themselves and being
Yeah.
independent themselves. So I feel like a lot of things that he needed to learn, I don't think he caught on. But with that said, I feel like he's such a family guy and he really wants to. So ধরো আজকে সকালে after our little tiff, he cleaned the entire house.
Oh,
He cleaned the entire
I
house.
mean, kudos.
Good job, Fuad.
Yeah, good job. He cleaned the entire house. Um, and he apologized. And I feel like, some people they will fight you on these kinds of things, or like it
Or
becomes
be
a blame
super
game.
passive aggressive and not
Hmm.
apologize or say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think which I think is something that allowed us to co-parent in a way where I do take on more of the load, because I also see that, there are certain things that also he physically also can't do. He just had a surgery. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things I can't just leave Zen with him and just say that I'm going to take off for a couple of hours, because he won't be able to run around with him. But
I saw this Brene Brown clip where she was saying that um, there's no such thing as a 50-50 relationship. I
Yep.
don't think I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 50-50. It's a partnership. And she says with her spouse, and they probably worked through this a ton to get to this place. But she's like, I think, I don't know, I might get it wrong, but it was like, if I'm at a 20, like they check in with each other, like, where are you?
Yep.
And if I can't, as your partner, cover your 80% that day because you're so depleted, you're at a 20, then like that's what they do for each other. And so they kind of check in, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm at a 40 and someone else covers for you that day. So I always
And
think,
sometimes neither covers, and they
yeah,
both understand that. Yeah.
yeah, but it's like this
and everyone's
expectation
just watching YouTube.
well, yeah, everybody.
Scrolling.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
just
but
on
this
Reels.
expectation of like 50-50, like, I don't know if that's even realistic.
I think
No.
part of that is also, again, how we have all evolved, right? When you think about our parents' generation, going back to a little bit of like Maya talking about, what Fuad experienced, etc. All of us, right?
Yeah.
When our parents, that relationship was very different from our current relationships or
Yeah.
marriages, is the expectation typically was that the mom would stay at home and
Yep.
take care of all things, and the dad was, at work, and that was his sole responsibility. And I think, most of our spouses grew up seeing that. And, that's not just a Bangladeshi thing.
Yeah. It's
In many cultures, that was expectation. And then it sort of changed into this whole, wow, women are now going out into the workforce and they're, contributing the same, if not more. And,
yeah.
that's when that whole 50-50 started happening. But there's also another article that talks about even with all of that, and even with dads providing more support, women have what's called a mental load. And it's something
Yeah.
that you just cannot transfer to the dad because it's just too much going on, right? Like, I know my
Yeah.
kid needs to wear a swimsuit tomorrow to camp. The other one I need to order lunch for. This kid's friend's birthday party's on Saturday. I need to get a birthday present. Those are things that I don't know if this is just something because females are, I don't know, just think differently, but we just remember a lot of these things that we have to be accountable for that men very easily can just not
Yeah.
worry about. Or they could be, oh, you didn't, he didn't take a swimsuit today. No big deal. Meanwhile, I'm like, I feel it as a mom,
Yes,
right?
totally. No,
So yeah,
even while divorced, so there was another article that's like if married couples co-parented like divorced parents, there
mm,
could be a chance that their
yeah,
relationship would be better because you give your kids, I give my kids to the dad, and that's it. Like I
yeah,
don't know what's going on over there. I have no control. But when you're talking about like the women's like mental load, I'm the one that's like sending all these messages of like, here's the address, here's the thing, here's his camp, here's the this, like every detail. It's in every
yeah,
calendar. So, I mean, I don't know if I shouldn't do it, but I feel like if I don't do it, it might not
yeah,
happen. And it could be totally just me
Yeah.
on me,
yeah.
but it happens even if you're not married. It's just
100%.
co-parenting.
One of the things today that I was talking about was that I felt I often, not even often, every day probably feel like, I start my day job, right? My day job, my meetings start around 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 6 in the morning, my time, and it ends around 5, right? Around 5, I have to go pick up my son, and then, it's summertime, my daughter's home. That kind of starts my second job, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
Once I have Zen over, then it's like a whole new shift starts where I'm preparing dinner, I'm getting them ready for bed, I'm getting everything ready for tomorrow.
Yes.
And like, what happens then? But I feel like those are the things that can be shared, but it also requires that partner's participation and eagerness as well.
Yeah.
It can't just be that, okay, here are the tasks that you have to do, but that person also has to want to participate and take on some of that load themselves without being
Yeah.
asked.
I also saw this like, and Fuad's dad sadly passed when he was really young. But I've seen men whose dads are in their lives still,
Yeah.
but so removed, and it's the same thing. Like, I guess having them there and not having them there is the same thing. They still didn't learn, or like the misogyny, the patriarchal expectations and behaviors are still there, whether they're
Yeah.
raised here or raised in Bangladesh. And I don't know if it's a generational thing within our generation, but I'm hopeful that our younger like the younger men see it in a different way. Or I'm like, I feel like I put extra pressure on myself because I have a son to raise him in a way
Yeah.
where he's more sensitive to these things and doesn't just think the world is his oyster every day, right? Or people just he's entitled to behave that way.
Yeah. I think, with our parents' generation, and we were talking about this because we had watched like a clip from another podcast, that like our dads, they were also raised by parents and dads that
Yeah.
were very much removed and very similar expectations that like they didn't learn to do this any differently, right? Because when we all had kids, and I'm sure you guys have heard it from your parents, they were shocked to see my husband changing my
Yes.
kid, our kids, not my
Yes.
kid, our kid's
Yeah.
diaper, right? Like that was such a big deal. আল্লাহ কি ভালো একটা ছেলে, দেখো দেখো diaper change করে দিচ্ছে. I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean? Like that's his kid too, you
Mhm.
know? Like why is it that when we go out and the dad stays home, it's oh, dad is babysitting the kids, but when
Yeah.
we're home, like
Yeah.
Maya's right now, oh, she's just watching the kids. And I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
some of us have had that pressure, like Marion, you and I are both in jobs where we travel a lot.
Mhm.
And I remember when we first had kids, it was this ongoing comment from the Bangladeshi circle, like,
Yep.
হ্যাঁ, এত travel করে, ট্যুরে যায়, like, বাচ্চা এত ছোট একটা বাচ্চাকে রেখে যাচ্ছে and all this stuff. And I'm like, but that's his kid too,
Yes.
and he is supportive of my career and respects, what I do, and it's okay. But it always went back to কি ভালো ছেলে, কি ভালো জামাই, দেখো দেখো
Always.
কি করছে, and nothing about the fact that before I left, I would literally cook
All
like
the
for
meals.
7 days, label every fucking thing, put out their clothes for the entire week, like
Yeah.
what they're gonna wear, check the fucking weather, like all this stuff, right? Like again, mental load that nobody respects, but
I
like
used to put
man,
outfits in Ziploc bags labeled Monday through
yep,
Friday.
Monday
that's
through Friday.
exactly what I did. But
Mhm.
all the parents are, like our parents remembered is ki bhalo chele, ki bhalo jamai, It's like,
So
what the
when
fuck do you think we're doing?
Minal was born, I don't know. I followed like at that time there wasn't a ton, but it was like Kourtney Kardashian and like Kimora Lee Simmons and
Oh
their
my
like
God.
fabulous motherhood, like coming into motherhood lives. And there was all this stuff you would read about what is like the skin to skin contact when their baby
Yeah.
is really early. And so I mean, I did that, I think, in the hospital. We were in Italy, so everything was different. Um, but my mom, like Nash would do that. And I think my mom would be like, what is he doing? And she didn't say anything to me. But later on, my friend, our parents are really good friends, and I heard the moms talking, and her mom was like, হাসতে হাসতে মরে যাচ্ছে, like it was this joke. She's like, কি করে দেখি শার্ট বুতাম খুলে বাচ্চাকে এখানে নিয়ে, and it's like she's like, বলে এটা skin to skin contact, bonding হয় বাচ্চার সাথে, বাবাদের bonding.
Oh my God.
And it was, I mean, it's funny, but like the fact that that is so bizarre to them
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
hilarious to me. Because
I
It
remember
is.
my mom walking in on Fuad like that too. Bechara lodjay.
yeah, you're embarrassed for those things. But yeah, I was like, my mom was saying my dad, when they had my sister 9 years before me, he would like luka ador korto, because mom,
Wow.
brother, sister, it was such a like male dominant, like made ছেলেরা এরকম করে না, like you have to be
Yeah.
tough and strong. Like that's the generation that he grew up in. I think many in their generation.
And they never got that love from their father
No.
either, right? It was like, Abba and like Apne. So my dad, he used to call his parents Apni.
Yeah.
I don't know if a lot of you guys, I can't imagine doing that with my parents, right? Like, but it was such a big thing. And I think some of that influence came from being part of Pakistan at a point too, where like they do say up with even their parents.
Is that where that came
Um,
from? I thought it was respect.
it is out of respect, but that's how like, they do say up for their to their parents, which I think in Bengali culture we are a lot more closer to our parents, where even our parents will say tui, right? That's not as common, and I don't know if that's the case in all the languages, but I feel like the affection is definitely more prominent in the Bangladeshi culture.
In our
Um,
language.
yeah, and in our language, which makes it so beautiful. But, I think our parents' generation, they were just sort of kind of evolving from that, the pre whatever it's called, independence
Well, that's
time.
it. Like you think
Yeah.
about what they've been through. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, God, I wish they knew better, but you can't blame them. Like they
Yeah.
lived
They were in
through
like
War.
survival mode.
independence,
Yeah.
literally the war. Like my mom will tell us stories of like she's still traumatized by like the sounds of like loud sounds and all of those things. She's like so it'll always remind me of that time. Or many people like their parents or their dads fought in the war. Like there's so
Mm-hmm.
much of that that they have to come out of that. And we're only what, 50 years old, 50
Yeah.
years post independence, which is
Yeah.
nothing. So they're
52, I
still,
guess.
yeah, like within their generation was so much change. So I can't
Yeah.
imagine changing
Yeah.
that much over your lifetime. Like that's a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's important because now that we're at this age where we're experiencing the same things, right? Having children, seeing how our partners are as dads, it's an important reminder because a lot of times I think about the way my parents raised me. And of course, I shouldn't speak for everyone, but I focus on like all the things they did wrong,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's, I always forget the context of they lived in a very different world. They
Yeah.
had their own generational trauma, and they were making up for it by giving us better lives, by, you
Yeah.
know, migrating or getting jobs that kept them away from their own parents. And I think about
Yeah.
how traumatizing that is. I mean, I sort of lived that because I live so far away from my parents, that
Mm-hmm.
how hard it was when they left. They didn't know when they would see them again. They would
Mm-hmm.
write letters that would take weeks, if not months, to get to each
Telegrams,
other.
my mom still talks
Yeah,
about.
Telegrams. Yeah.
telex and then telex, right? Like this is pre-fax days. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a bird carrying a message across the
Yeah.
globe is how slow communication was. And then if you had enough money, you could make that one phone call that would last 5 minutes if that meant much. And that was you didn't know when you would hear from them again.
Yeah.
And that I think is really scary to think about. Like, I don't know how, I can't remember. I think you mentioned how old your parents were, for example, when they moved to the States. Because
Mm-hmm.
they were all young parents. They had no help. They didn't speak the language because
Yeah.
many of
My
them moved
mom,
to
I think, was
countries.
barely 20. My dad was like
Yeah.
barely 25.
Imagine that age moving to a country where you knew nobody. Some people that you heard, like, hey, Apti or whatever, moved to Minnesota. And it was never a warm
Yeah.
place.
Yes.
Never a
It
warm
was.
place.
It's Canada, Montreal.
Yeah, and then you didn't know, I mean, maybe our dads knew the language, but not our moms. Like that nobody was proficient. And then having to manage all that and raise
My parents had to
kids.
learn French.
Yeah.
They
Like so
did.
Think about it.
it was mandatory. Like they were, I think they
Right.
were even paid to take the French club, but they had to learn French. I think my dad, when they finally made it over here, because it took time, by the
Yeah.
time they got here, whatever company he was supposed to work for, like filed for bankruptcy, and there was like no
Oh
job.
my God.
So it's like they had to figure it all out.
I think that's why, yeah, it's important to remind ourselves of that because it's so easy to kind of, I don't know, like point fingers at them and be like, well, you didn't do this, this, and this. And to now look at like the dads, like our kids' dads, and how much more involved they are in, the kids' lives, which I remember when like I had Zane, uh, my dad was on his knees, like on the floor playing with Zane, and my mom was shocked to see that.
Yeah.
And I wonder also like the dynamics of then becoming grandparents and
Hmm.
how that changes. And I think the biggest change I typically see are in the men, where,
Absolutely.
our dads become way more affectionate and they
Yeah.
do things with our kids that they never did with us,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
Um,
My dad is super affectionate as is. Like I'm his love child and he says that all the time. He's like, since your conception, আমি জানতাম তুমি মেয়ে হবা। আমার মা একবার তার সাথে ফাইজলামি করে বলছে যে আমাকে কে যেন বললো আমার চেহারা দেখে যে আমার ছেলে হবে।
Of course.
And he got very upset. He was very upset. সে নাকি বাসায় গিয়ে কি একটা পোস্টার নাকি ছিল সে ছিঁড়ে ফেলছে। মানে সে এত আপসেট ছিল যে সে তার মেয়ে হবে। ওই সময় তো
Wow.
they didn't have ultrasound and all of that, right?
yeah.
So I remember when I had Azalea, like she was 2 weeks early. So suddenly when my water broke and he found out, like আমরা তখন hospital দিকে যাচ্ছি, And Fuad called him and let him know that, my water broke and I'm heading to the hospital. He booked a flight right then, like
Oh,
literally right then and there. He flew the next day, like he was there the morning of, and there was a snowstorm. He traveled
Oh
through the
my God.
snowstorm. Luggage নিয়ে airport থেকে straight he came to the hospital.
oh,
Hospitale এসে সে এখন মানে আমি তো ওখানে ধরো I'm just exhausted, right? Like I went through labor, I had a baby, I'm all stitched up and all that. And he's like opening his luggage right there in the hospital room. He's
আমি
like,
তোমার জন্য
Seko,
এটা নিয়ে
আমি
আসছি।
বাবুর জন্য এটা নিয়ে আসছি।
Oh,
And here I am. I'm like all completely, you're just so overwhelmed with, and also so much hormone surging,
Yeah.
through your whole body. And I remember, and I regret it now because I was kind of mean to him and I was sort of like pushing him away a little bit. And I just wanted to be with my baby and I didn't want to have to interact with anybody else. But like thinking back now, and I see even now, and one of his promises were always to be there for my kids' birthdays. So
oh,
Azalea's
Oh,
first birthday, he was there. Second birthday, he couldn't make it because what was going through a surgery. But I mean, he's tried to be there for all the milestones and birthdays and things like that, and just how active he is and how precious their relationship is
oh,
just it
that's
just
so nice.
blows my mind. And even like my daughter, if I ask her, who is your favorite grandparent? I mean, she's got two sets from my side, and
yeah.
then
Oh
she's got
yeah.
Dada, who's Fuad's mom, on the other side. Hands down, it's always Nanabaya. Nanabaya is number one because
Oh.
Nanabaya plays with her. Nanabaya will spend
Yeah.
time with her. Nanabaya will sit and listen to everything that she has to say. But everyone else kind of মারা কি করে মারা আসছি রান্না করবো তোমাকে খাওয়াবো,
Right.
let's do all of that. But no, Nanabaya doesn't have all that responsibility. Nanabaya can just sit and play.
That's right. That's so sweet. Like my mom
Yeah.
will say, আমি আসি আমার মেয়েকে দেখে রাখার
হ্যাঁ,
জন্য.
হ্যাঁ, 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 হ্যাঁ,
So I
same.
mean, she loves her grandkids and all of that, but it's true. Like my dad was much more active. But
Yeah.
it's funny that I don't know. But to me, it's funny. Like I don't know what it is, but the dynamics of like your mom's side versus your dad's side and how close the kids are,
Yes.
even how we are like much closer to my mom's side than my dad's side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that
Yeah.
Yes.
comes from, but I feel like that's also a little bit of a trickling down of how close the dads are, therefore how close their families have been,
Exactly.
how close they are with you. It's an
I
impact.
feel like, though, I think if my father-in-law was alive and here, Azalea would have this insane bond with him because she's one of those people. I feel like she like there are days when she comes to us, like especially সন্ধ্যার দিকে এসে উনার ছবি নিয়ে এসে কান্না শুরু করে দেয়.
Oh.
And
Really?
she starts crying and she's like,
Mm.
I saw him. I saw Dada Bhaiya. He came and he spoke to me and he
What?
said everything's going to be okay. And,
Wow.
and I'm missing him. I'm just missing him so much. And she just randomly misses him. And that's like a weird
Wow.
connection. And I'm like, you've never met him. How do you miss him?
Yeah.
And she just starts crying and she's just like, I miss him. I don't know.
Oh
I
my
think about
gosh.
him all the time. Everything revolves around Dada Bhaiya. And I
Huh.
think that, yeah, everything. And when Fuad was going through all these health issues, I feel like she also shut down a little bit because I think whenever he would be sick or he like, he would have to go through a procedure or something like that, she kind of goes back to Dada Bhaiya and starts remembering him more because maybe that's some sort of a fear that she has.
Yeah.
But I feel like Azalea is so much closer with the male figures in the
Mm.
family as opposed to the women. Um, but yeah, that's kind of a weird
That's so
weird
nice. That's very
tidbit.
sweet that but I
Yeah.
feel like she's also spiritually at another level for her age.
Yeah.
That's
True.
true.
I
I was
do.
thinking about dads showing affection, and it's funny because, and I've seen these like memes and things too about Bangladeshi dads where they may not hug you and kiss you, but they'll like bring right? Like mangoes and cut it up for you and be like, Ma, torjuneniashti, like, eat
Yeah.
this. And it's not like one or two mangoes, it's a fucking
Yeah.
crate. You're like,
Yeah.
who's eating this?
Who's
It's
gonna
just
eat
me. Like, Mama, like everything is like
Yes.
in excess, right? Like it's so
Yeah.
funny, but that's the way they show affection because again, they never saw like a physical affection, which I think I was trying to explain this to my non-Bangladeshi friends, like not non-Bangla speaking friends, that we don't actually have a saying "I love you" that's more than a romantic "I love you." We don't say "I love you" to our parents. Like you don't say that in Bangla. You don't say
Or
"আমি
just
তোমাকে
not in a
ভালোবাসি."
casual way at all. It's
No,
almost
you
like a
don't.
dialogue.
It's
Yeah.
no one says
আমি
"আমি
তোমাকে
তোমাকে
এত ভালোবাসি।
Yeah.
You just, and it's because, again, in our culture, we don't have that
Oh, that's
term of
interesting.
endearment where, again, we are a little bit more, I don't know, more formal with our parents than the
Or is
Western
it
culture is.
or is it like just different words remember we were saying like you were just saying ma the marginal like there's no other culture I don't think or in a language where we use
Yeah.
the words that we call our parents we use for our kids
Yeah.
or I mean there's so like daknams like all of
Yeah.
those things but I
Latinos do it too. I had to put it
Mm-hmm.
out there. You can cut it
oh,
out. Papi.
oh yeah
Eh,
that's right
papi.
that's
But
right
papi
they're
is
not just
not,
for
is
kids
that dad in Spanish too, or is that
yeah
papa?
Yeah.
yeah
Papi.
it's also papi
Papa is potato.
Oh.
alu
That was Zen's nickname in his daycare from his Spanish teacher.
yeah
Yeah.
papi yeah
Oh
you're
my
right.
God. I think in Korean too, they call like their husbands or boyfriends the same thing as dad, something like that.
Do you know,
Um,
I've seen like desi couples, the women calling their husbands dad, like daddy or mommy. Like is this
well,
Or like Abu.
yeah, because the other part also interestingly in like Bangladeshi families, a lot of well, back in the day you would get married to someone much older than you. And out of respect, you didn't call your husband their name
oh
because they're
yeah.
so much older. So when you had so before you had a kid, you would just go,
Hey.
"춤춰, hey, ogo." And then when you had the kid, it'd be like, Zainer Baba, right?
My mom still
So
calls my dad Tito
yeah,
Abu.
Really?
yes. I have, aunts that do the same thing. They don't
No.
call their husbands their name because they're a lot older.
What do
Oh,
your
they
Um,
say
parents
like
call each other?
Amarili. What?
What did your parents call each other?
Mine?
yeah.
My dad would call her Millie, and my mom would say, hey,
Hey.
See?
hey.
What about
That's
you?
so my parents called each other their names, but they're not that much. I think my dad is like 2.5 years older than her. Um, but yeah, is that why, Mary? Like,
No,
was
they're
your
5 years,
dad
not that much older.
that's old and for Bangladeshis? Please, I remember I got yelled at because I had a cousin that was like 6 months older than me and I didn't
Oh, I
call
should have.
him Paya,
Yeah,
right? Like to
yeah.
that extent, like
Yeah.
anything older is
Maybe they started
expected.
off calling him high or something when before like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did your
Then
parents have
what
a
do you
love?
do? Huh?
Did your parents have an arranged marriage?
No, no.
Oh.
Love.
Love marriage.
And
Only
if they
love.
still called, and she still called him A.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting.
Maybe that's
I
their
actually had a
endearment.
Yeah. I had a friend who dated another friend of mine in Dhaka, and they used to call each other Apni.
Shotti.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen that.
yeah,
I've seen that.
yeah.
You. I'm
Yeah.
judging. I'm totally judging. I shouldn't. But there's that, but there's also people like tui tui korodake, and I think that's kind of really cute.
Oh my God. So I do have like my mom's cousin. They say tui tui to each other, the husband and wife, and it's
I
the
think that's
cutest
so
like
cute.
couple hashtag couple goals. Like
Yeah.
it's
Like your
so awesome.
friends.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
also think that's also a dynamic that you don't, I mean, we never saw our parents being affectionate with
Physical. Yes.
Mhm.
never.
Yep.
But, my dad would like give her things, like they would give gifts, or you could tell like they would joke and banter like that. You could always tell
Yeah.
that was there, that they had a very special or a different relationship than like a very stoic what their parents may have had.
Yeah.
Which I also think set me up for failure, because I also think that that's what I had expected my
Mm,
relationship to be.
With the banters.
Yeah, just like that unspoken
yeah.
bond. Like you don't have to say those things, or you don't like, you know. Um. Anyway, but that's for another time. But
You
I
had that
do
with your
think,
girls.
yeah. But my dad, like, they would also. I mean, even till like the very late in age, right? Even before he died, like they would still like we all left for college or whatever. They would go on little dates, and they always like spent time with each other, even though they were always surrounded by other people. So I don't know. I feel like maybe whatever my dad didn't have, he was really
Yeah.
intentional about doing that with his wife and his family.
I
Do
think
you
it's
think that the way that he was with your mom, do you think that set up expectations for you as to what you expected your husband to be like?
100%.
What about
Totally.
you?
yeah, I mean that's typically how it goes, right? And that's why they always say like you have to be careful how you are around your kids because that's what they learn.
Yeah.
Um, so that I think everyone has that expectation. But I think in many of our cultures, everything is sort of like it has a purpose, right? Marriage, it's sometimes it feels a little bit like they're all things like goals that you have to check off to, that you're
Yeah.
supposed to do and not necessarily enjoy. And that's why many times you don't see like that generation doing things like I'm gonna go on a date or like go travel with just my spouse. Like, বাচ্চাদেরকে রেখে যাচ্ছে. Like, it's shocking to people, right? So that's the sort of, I don't know, generation we observed as like that's what marriage looks like. I mean, they're definitely outliers, like what
Yeah.
like even your parents, but typically it was very much like this is a job that you have to do. You have to get married and you have to have
Yeah.
children, and your purpose is, then to take care of your larger family, etc. And that's, you're not necessarily supposed to be focusing on each other, that you're
That's
sacrificing for everyone else.
I think I've definitely seen that. I think one of my like my parents, for them, whatever they did, they had to do. Kids, they did together, they did with their kids, which when I was married and I did that, it was overwhelming. I was like, either we need
Yeah.
time for ourselves or I need time for myself. Like even now my mom will be like, এত জামাইদের ফেলে ফেলে টি পার্টি করার কি দরকার? এত
Yeah,
জামাইদের ফেলে
exactly.
ফেলে girls night করার কি দরকার? Right?
Yep.
Even babysitters was like, when we introduced babysitters into our life, she was like, no.
Yeah.
ওদের যা করবা বাচ্চাদের সাথে নিয়ে করবা, এটা ভালো না। But so I don't know. I think we're all confused.
Well, no, I think again, it's things change and every generation learns something new
Yeah.
or the environment is different and that's how we operate. In
Yeah.
our parents' generation, it was very different. And now, again, like we're both typically working parents.
Yeah.
We're very busy. We're both exhausted. Like you're saying, we both come back home
Yeah.
at 20% each. None of us are like, I'm giving my 100% to you as a partner. It's just not possible.
But
And so you go through, yeah.
No, I think it's important to have like your own interests, your own kind of your own thing too. Like you don't have to do
Exactly.
everything together. And to
Yeah.
some people, that's like bishi independent. Like, so bishi,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And
Like,
again, it's the girls that get
Always.
yeah, I mean that it's the girls that they point fingers to like কেন এগুলি করার কি দরকার পডকাস্ট করার কি দরকার you know
এসব
Yeah.
টিকটকের কি হলো? টিকটক
হ্যাঁ
করতে না বেশি।
2 ঘন্টা ধরে কি সব ব্যাকপ্যাক করছে আর বাচ্চাগুলি না খেয়ে বসে আছে কি জামাই খাওয়াবে like today